And you are good to go.
Good evening. We have a quorum present, so we'll proceed with the agenda. And the first thing on the agenda are minutes from the meeting held November 1st. It's been distributed. Does anyone like a copy?
Yes.
If you need a moment, I'll give you a moment to review them. If you haven't already, then I'll need a motion to accept them or amend them.
Motion to accept is presented.
A motion to accept, second by Mike. Yes, Mike, you can be a voting member. Michelle is absent tonight. Okay, there's been a motion made to accept the minutes as presented, second by Mike Wallace. Any discussion? None? Those in favor of the motion? No opposition? So moved.
This is yours.
Oh. Did someone say, oh. The purpose of the meeting tonight is a public hearing dealing with a apartment complex that's proposed for construction on Spring Street, 70 Spring Street here in Millinocket. That's not exactly how it's listed on the agenda, but it's the essence of what we're here for. What I want to do now is open the floor to individuals representing the project. To Mr. Bird, Mr. Bragg, the floor is yours to present this to the, well, again, to the board, but to the membership and the public in attendance.
Thank you. There you go. My name is Jason Bird. I'm the Housing Development Director for Penquis. We're based in Bangor, but we have programs and services that cover almost all the state of Maine, but primarily eastern and northern Maine. As the chair said, we've submitted a site plan application for 36 units of housing, all 1-bedroom units of housing. And this, I can easily go through the presentation that I did when I was remote, the first discussion, but I think many of you saw that, or probably don't want to hear me drone on again necessarily about all the stuff that Penquis does and those kinds of things. So I'll skip over that. I've got it here. Should you have any questions or want to see pictures of any of the existing buildings that we have developed. But I'll pull up the site plan in a moment here and kind of walk through the layout as we designed it, and happy to answer any specific questions. Mr. Bragg here is with Carpenter Associates. Among other things, they are the civil, technically, that's in this capacity, the civil engineer that does really the hard work and the data analysis to make sure that the building is suitable, has the water that it needs, and has the services and utilities that it needs to function and operate. If you left that up to me, it would be a very scary situation. So I'm going to drop that. Okay. I'm going to get there and just point out a couple of things, just so you all have. Let's do that actually. Just to point out a few things, and actually I'll take this with me so that like people at home can hear. But you can see at the top of the screen is Spring Street. Congress Street is here to the right. This map is oriented, north being at the top. I don't know about magnetic north versus true north, but either way, the building as we've oriented it, based on the lot itself, is to have the orientation run essentially north to south. we've had a fair amount of, inquiry and interest, or asking about our plans for the brick building that exists on the property. Right now, the scope of this application and our current plans don't include the redevelopment of that property just yet. Our focus today and for this application is to get the process underway for the new 36 units that we're proposing to build. And then once that process is undertaken, assuming we do receive approval in any fashion, we'll then unleash Randy and his team and our architect, along with contractors, to price out the project and confirm that it meets our budgetary constraints that we have. Once that process is underway, then we'll sort of turn our attention to the brick building. But our intent there, just so you may be able to answer the questions, would be that it would be a multi-use building, primarily residential. But we know there are a few businesses, or in particular in the basement space, that we would love to retain, as well as having sort of a mixed use property there. We've provided adequate parking here, as you can see, and there are a lot of lines certainly, but the parking running up against the building as well to the north. Overflow parking, should it be necessary, would be accommodated at the north of the existing building, just knowing that the anticipated need, I should say, for parking for the brick building in the future, with 7, maybe 8 units in the entire building, in the brick building, wouldn't require that full parking area. We've located obviously the dumpsters, the non real interesting stuff, but the dumpsters in the bottom here, as well as we have garden space for tenants to be able to grow their own vegetables or flowers. And then there's obviously this additional green space here that we may carve out from the brick building, so that it's more of a lawn space for both properties. So I think that's the extent of my quick overview of the project, but I know many of you have seen this the second or third time, so I don't want to belabor the point, and I'm happy to answer questions or hear from the public.
And I think we have to cut off some point of procedure here, because we have a 7-man board, and we have people sitting up here. We're all good. It's already. It's already taken care of. Yeah.
Point of clarification is, we have an alternate present. If there wasn't full 7 members, he would continue, since Michelle is here. Mike is present and will not be voting.
So we already voted on something.
She wasn't here.
Voted on.
She wasn't here when we did the.
Yeah, no, that's by the way. Okay. George.
Yeah, point of order. He can't vote, but he can still have impact and comments. Thank you.
I don't want to keep on going back.
I don't want to keep on going back and forth to this thing. Alternate members are expected to attend meetings, even though they aren't able to vote necessarily unless there's an absence. Because if they just come in cold, they're not very productive if they're just coming in and don't know what's occurring. So that he's present, and hopefully there'll be another alternate at some day in the future. They'll be. All right, thank you. I can't see, if I can jump in, I can't see well at this distance, but I know I sent you correspondence about the parking arrangements. At some point, I would like something from Tankquist dealing with the single parking space per apartment. It's mentioned in the document that the one parking place per apartment. However, I wanted stated that there'll be one renter per parking place, so that there isn't an issue going forward that we have difficulty accommodating the number of cars.
That, yes, we can certainly accommodate that. We do that actually in the lease. So the tenant will sign a lease that says you're allowed one parking space. So I can provide a copy of a draft lease that would be helpful. And knowing that obviously that may change down the road if, you know, state law changes with other aspects of the agreement, but the parking designation section wouldn't, if that's helpful. Otherwise, I'm not sure what other mechanism or documentation we could provide other than it obviously being a condition of site plan approval.
It's a concern of site plan approval because off-street parking is a concern
Sure,
because of the accommodations and its limited space. That it's stated up front that an individual coming into this complex would be limited to one vehicle per rental is my point. They might say, fine, I want to get one parking place and I'll just figure out what I'll do when things get tight. I don't want that to happen.
sure,
Okay.
sure.
Visitor parking.
There's the question was visitor parking. There's two visitor parking places. I think that needs to be addressed also. I mentioned that on the first, that,
When we do the pre-construction set of plans that then get reviewed by members of the municipal staff, we identify visitor parking and actually unit parking as well. And my property manager does a bit of a, you know, calculation and game to make sure that the tenant that's furthest away doesn't then get the furthest parking space. And so we end up labeling, you know, unit 101 all the way through what would be unit 301, what have you, every spot on the space. But one thing I was going to mention is that if the town is adequately and appropriately concerned about parking, certainly I'll state here that tenants are only going to be allowed one parking space as part of their tenancy. But the town could, and we would accept a condition that would say that you know, tenants would only be allowed one parking space. So we wouldn't then be able to give one tenant 4 spaces or what have you, right? And start gumming up the works. We'd be willing to sort of accept that restriction.
Excuse me, I'm not very technical. The
issue wouldn't materialize until vehicles started to show up on the street, especially during winter times. And the town, I say, couldn't care about the parking places here until it started to be a problem for the town crews cleaning the streets. But that's the way I would view it.
If I may, just one thing I want to mention is that if someone were to be a tenant of ours and register 3 cars with the town of Millinocket, we're not, and I'm being honest here, we can't police that, right? We can't prevent them from parking on the street. The town, you know, staff, police department, what have you, would have to address that. I don't think it would happen. I can tell you where this, well, you know, technically it could be a, you know, market rate housing. Where this is affordable housing, the individuals that are going to be residing there wouldn't be able to afford to register and maintain and upkeep multiple cars anyway. But with that said, you know, they're adults and what they do outside of the property really is nothing we're able to control.
Understood. The other issue dealing with parking was in the application, it indicated there were 2 visitor spaces in the accommodations, and that seems a little tight. Then you mentioned, and it was mentioned about places on the west side of the lot, but that there's space available, but not for this purpose is my concern, that it's somewhat dedicated. If there is space needed, it's already been identified as a visitor parking place for a facility.
So our plan with the spaces north of the brick building or to the west of our proposed building would be, sort of unmarked and overflow parking, because we know that there are times where the business on the ground floor of the brick building for an hour, hour and a half, what have you, pick up and drop off, would have a, somewhat a more intensive need for the parking. But otherwise, leaving it still professionally managed and maintained and striped, but unmarked would be the best for visitors of this building that we're proposing and for the brick building. And we would have essentially an agreement between the two ownership entities, which will be, really us in the end, so that guests and visitors can, have the ability legally to go walk back and forth.
Okay, but as far as available space, not that it'll be too difficult to deal with. Parking place is 9 feet wide, 18 feet long. Is there enough space on that northwest side of the lot to accommodate what's anticipated for that Rustic Avenue School property going forward, and what might be needed with this facility being proposed?
So our intent is to, when we do develop the brick building, would be to look at that somewhat in a myopic view, but our intent though, and my initial numbers, having our architect or engineering team look at it, would be anywhere from 7 to 8 units within that building, and that's a mix of maybe 2 and maybe 1 or 2 3-bedroom units, and then other 1-bedroom units. So I think in total in that scenario, we'll be looking at 10 to 12 spaces needed at very, very most for the proposed brick building. But on balance, I would say that we could accommodate 25 to 30 spaces in the existing bricked area that otherwise, I'm going to pull up a picture here if that's helpful to give you some scale. So we think that's more than adequate in that respect. Hold on 1 second, sorry, I'm going to grab. Do just another quick screen share because I have a Google Earth image that can lend some context. So here is the brick building as you can see it here, and then there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 or so spaces just around the existing building, right? But the lot line goes out to somewhere, I think out here. So I think we have more than enough space, currently paved to address not only the need for what may happen in the building, but also, like I said, the spillover or other space for the new proposed building.
All right, I think we're both on the same page on this, in the sense of making sure we're not painting ourselves into a problem going forward. All right, thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Jim?
Turned on the same time. Can I have this stuff? I'm wondering, I'm sorry I was late, it was really unavoidable. But I'm wondering if the neighbors, if you've been out to see the neighbor's property or address their concerns about their properties?
So we did, a staff person did go door to door to drop off some information. I have attempted to call the numbers that we knew or could find online, but in particular, I have had a number of email exchanges with Mr. Levitt, who is one of the abutters. But he is the only abutter that I've had a conversation with, either,
Have you gone out and looked at the property and kind of figured where that's gonna be? Because I went, I don't know if anyone else went, I went.
Yes, I have. Yeah, I've walked the site a number of times and then looked at parcel maps and satellite images as well.
I'm wondering if there's any sort of accommodations you guys can make to try to mitigate the problems that they're concerned about? Is there any leeway? Can you move the building in another part of the parking lot, or put in a big hole so they could see the sun? Or, anything. I know you can't do that, I'm kidding.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's a big enough backhoe for that, but so I'm trying to think of how best to start the answer, but the answer is yes. So I think we've tried to accommodate and mitigate to the extent possible. We are somewhat site constrained because there are easements and other considerations right now where Rustic Avenue Paper Street used to be. That hems us in a bit, so we couldn't just sort of flip the orientation of that, unfortunately. The other challenge that we did look at flipping the building so that it was parallel to the southern boundary of the lot. The challenge is though that with setbacks and proximity to the existing brick building as well as existing structures and the legal agreements that we're essentially buying into by buying that property.
Right.
You know, we wouldn't be able to do anything with the outbuilding that exists. And so, not to mention though, the costs associated with that orientation, because we have to bring the utilities in several hundred more feet, as well as just, you know, just a lot more earthwork and site work, unfortunately. So it became cost prohibitive from that perspective. But to your point, or your question and Mr. Levitt's question that he's emailed me in the earlier weeks ago around concerns of shading or you know, sun exposure. In doing very quick math, with our building being at 40 feet or lower, you'd think our engineer would be able to have the exact number right now, but he doesn't, in terms of exactly how many feet it's gonna be. It's gonna be below 40, I'm told. That on the worst day of the year, so to speak, right, December 21st, where the sun is lowest in the sky, there would be shadow casting onto the abutters properties for a few hours in the afternoon. On the inverse though, if you're looking at the summer months, say June 21st, when it's at its highest, the shading of our building wouldn't actually go over our property line. When you get into, you know, that's 20 feet or so. When you get into, you know, July and September, it starts to creep a bit, but it doesn't overshadow, you know, we're literally, doesn't overshadow the abutting properties. It just during the winter months and when the sun would get sort of on the west side of our
Okay.
building, but the shading start.
And the privacy concern?
The privacy concerns, I would say that, you know, we can, and Mr. Levitt and I were speaking earlier around fencing, as well as our shrubbery, and we have some flexibility, and we can certainly talk about exactly what may work best, you know, before construction starts, and we can accommodate that. But in terms of mentions that were made around sort of people peering in or down or what have you, I highly doubt someone's going to be interested in those kinds of things, but likewise, they may have the same concerns of people peering up at them. But I would say that, you know, in all the properties that we have, we've never heard of or had that kind of concern. I will say that we vet and do background checks on all of our tenants. So you know, we're not going to put someone in the property that we wouldn't want as a neighbor ourselves.
Right, thank you, and thank you very much for communicating that to the.
I had a concern, Peter, if you could put that slide back up that you had. just a minute
I
ago.
was either the satellite image or the site plan itself.
It was more like a photograph.
The photo, okay, yes, I can do that. Bear with me 1 second.
My concern during construction. Again, it's for my grandchild who's going to the dance studio. But at the present location, there's a dance school where cars are coming and going during certain hours. Now, on the site of the new building, on the Spring Street side, is currently parking spaces, a number of parking spaces that are utilized daily during when school is in session. And I'm wondering where those cars are gonna go during construction, but also when I look at the site plan, that Spring Street side, I think is gonna be eliminated, utilized out in a different manner, so those parking spaces are gonna be completely gone from the public. And I'm just wondering if you can take that in consideration.
Sure, so the parking spaces that are because the lot line, I think, somewhat mirrored this curve, this curving right here. I can say that, you know, that where we would be, you know, the parking spaces that are on our property, those would be gone. Because we're gonna bring the curb or the property line up, and we'll have our curb cut there. In terms of the public spaces that maybe, if there are any public parking spaces along that street, I'm not certain. But those,
Just to give you a reference, from the fence that you see on this photograph. That they own, 30 more feet to the right of way, to the road right of way. So there's plenty of space to put a whole entire row of parking along there. Imagine the fence as the center line, you could put another row of parking on the backside. And, there's not quite enough room to do another double row, but there's certainly enough for another single row for a total of 27 spaces. In the final design, you'll still have some space to be able to parallel park or perpendicular park against the existing brick building. And also there's, if needed, or it becomes an issue later, there's space to the south as well. We'd rather stay away from that for now and leave it green. But there's plenty of options to improve that if it becomes an issue later. We'd rather not pave everything right now and keep it as green as we can, but I also envision there being a construction fence, a construction barrier separating the two. Imagine a fence down the center of that paved area, if you will, plus or minus one way, enough to get people into the right-hand side of the building, and certainly to the north, and the entire right side being construction. So there would be a gated fence and all
That'll
these.
be a controlled access, so.
So there will be a controlled access, and we'll talk about that in a pre-construction meeting with the contractor. Once they're selected, that'll be a high priority, especially it always is in a residential neighborhood.
We'll actually lay down the area.
Well, they're gonna have to deal with that. I mean, there's a limited laydown area here, so I assume they'll use some area to the south for that. The south of the brick building, and they'll have to,
So your green area, basically south of the building would be a lay down area.
yeah, for now, and then at the end of the project, we can make them with
I'm
that.
sure you're gonna have to have more than that.
They will, but they, we've been on, believe it or not, tighter sites and they've done a good job, so, they're just gonna have to hold their materials off-site at another location. They're gonna have to figure that out. And in either Conex boxes or have them at their warehouse and have them delivered when they're needed. If you've been to the Bangor project, that site is narrower than this one. And there's just absolutely no room at the property line. There's zero room there, and they did a fairly good job there. If you,
The outdoor area is there too, you may be able to talk with Herschel Hufford and.
yep, there appears to be a lot of.
Comics boxes in there or something.
Yeah.
Two gray room, whatever else you
Sorry.
Yes.
Just one quick question. I'm direction talent. When you're saying north, you're talking about Spring Street?
yes,
Straight up.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Straight up, yeah.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Hi. Me help you.
Hi. I apologize for not being here last time, so, couple of questions that may have already been answered. This project, where did you get the numbers for the need?
the need, so we're in, I would say the fortunate but very unfortunate, situation of knowing that across the state, there are 20 to 30,000 units of affordable housing needed now, today. We, as a more of a perfunctory step, we do a market study, that's required based on our funding. But it's only done, at a later stage prior to, any dollars being awarded, but, we know, to use the field of dreams cliche, if we build it, they'll come. So we're certain that there is more than enough demand within the town of Millinocket, and if need be, the surrounding communities to fill 36 units several times.
Second question. Is this elderly and handicapped or specifically elderly?
It's a good question. When we build affordable housing for older adults, which is our aim here, we build essentially for both. So we put a number of grab bars and ADA accessible features in with the intent and goal of allowing someone to stay housed and stay there for as long as possible versus, them having to move earlier to a nursing facility or some other facility that requires a high level of care. And so we design and go, I wouldn't say above and beyond, because it's really the need that we're meeting a market need. But we, I think there are, of the 36, we'll probably have, I'm gonna look to Randy, but we haven't really talked about the interior design yet, but in relation to properties that we built, 30 or 39 to 40 units in the same size building. Of that, we put 17 fully accessible units in, and then on top of that, every other unit has grab bars around the toilets and other in the bathtubs and other spaces. So with that said, we're not legally, never would discriminate against someone that has a disability. So we certainly are available to tenants who do have disabilities, physically or
Under the age of 55.
that is a very good question for my property manager, because she is the one, or that team is the one that manages that. But in some scenarios that can happen, I don't think with our funding that is a scenario for this property, though. I don't want to be quoted as to say such, but most of the properties that we have that are older adult housing, we can elect the age, and there is not necessarily consideration for anyone that has a disability under 55, and they're under 55. That 55-year-old cap, minimum or maximum, I should say, is so hard and fast. So it wouldn't be the plan, but and I'm not stammering, but I'm trying to think of the funding requirements and legalities of it, as well as sort of fair housing regulations. But I'm going to say no, no one under the age of 55.
Okay, is that something that if you check and it might be that there are individuals that would qualify or that you weren't aware circumstances that the town could put that in there as a stipulation, just as the parking?
You have to speak to your attorney. I honestly don't know if the town would legally be able to put that type of restriction, and I honestly don't know.
And would you have social services within the building, a social area, somebody that helps elderly folks with the basics on site, or at least 1 to 2 days a week, so that if they are in a higher level of care need, if they need a Gould's assessment, I'm not sure what it's called now, but you know, the additional care, or to help when the time comes to move on into a more supportive setting?
So we do a number of things. In particular, we have a resident services coordinator who would be on site at least 1 day a week, probably more, to meet with the tenants, help them access needs, be a set of eyes and ears. What often or sometimes will happen is that they, with appropriate releases, can communicate with family members, so that way those that are living out of state or out of town may also communicate with the resident services coordinator should they have a concern for their elderly parent, to be able to help coordinate and address care. But yes, we don't just, while it may be the properties that we traditionally build are independent living. We don't necessarily treat it as such. We don't coddle people when they don't want our help, but otherwise we are there and are available, not only as a sort of an obligation that we impose upon ourselves, but also obligations that our funders have with us as well, to provide a more a high level and better service for our tenants.
Okay, is this a 2-story building or a 3-story building?
It will be a 3-story building with an elevator.
Okay, and you're purchasing the building next door if you purchase this piece of property, is that the
Yes,
situation?
so our purchase and sale agreement includes the entire parcel, which would includes not only the building, but the land as well.
And you would seek approval for what you do with that building?
Correct, yeah, we would have a separate application because we will split the parcel. So we'll come back with a separate application once we are well underway with you know, estimating and getting a contractor on board for tonight's discussion of the 36 units. But that would be a separate consideration once we can get in and look at the mechanical systems that we would need and all those other types of considerations.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Tom.
Hey, I want to clear some of this up because the public, I want to make sure the public understands. This is not going to be an assisted living facility. Correct? It's not going to be a class 1 or class 2 assisted living.
I don't traditionally deal with that, so I'm not certain about the designations, but, I think how best.
Yeah, you're not gonna have, there's not gonna be 24-hour care, there's not gonna be somebody there. These are gonna be individual, these are gonna be like a congregate housing facility. You will have a manager there, and you'll have a residential person comes in once, twice a week.
Yeah, so it is professionally managed, right? We do have 24/7 response, certainly.
Correct.
Yeah.
But there's nobody there 24/7 with, they have alarm buttons if they.
Standing guard.
Right.
No, I don't think so.
Right. So what this facility is, as I say, is gonna be more like a congregate. But you're gonna have a house manager or whatever you want, a site manager.
Right.
As well as a residential person comes in, like I say, once or a couple times a week or whatever, to aid people if they need help. Correct?
Right, yes, I would say though that the design of the property wouldn't deviate much though from in terms of quality or access to, alarm systems and sprinkler systems and those kinds of things.
Right, no, my only clarification there is I just want people to understand this is not going to be someplace where, there is 24-hour care there, similar to the assisted living facility here in the community. Thank you.
Is there a question from someone on Zoom? No.
Hi. I'm Susan D'Alessandro. I live on the corner of State and Spring. And I had a few questions like, what's the exterior gonna look like? And what's it gonna be constructed of? And when do you anticipate completion? And you've kind of answered about the brick building, but do you anticipate yet when that might become your project after this new building is completed? And you've kind of answered that you're not sure what the usage for that would be, but that the new building is independent living, 55 and older.
Okay, I didn't want to step on toes and answer, so I wasn't sure. Hi there, so I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully you can see that. I'll share the facade of the building that we've built before. Knowing that, and can you see that now at home?
Yes.
Fantastic. So this building that we're proposing is nearly identical to what you see on the screen here. While the colors may change, only because you'd be surprised that the cost of blue tomorrow could be 30% more than teal. I don't really know what colors, but so I can't say that it's going to have the same color palette, but the trim, the architectural features in terms of the offsets and things that sort of break up the facade, those will be the same, if not very, very similar, except for the roof. The roof that you see here is a pitched roof that would, if built, would be out of compliance with what is the most recent 40-foot height restriction for the zone. And so we will be going to a flat roof for this proposed building. But we will have some sort of, I don't know if cornice is the right word, but enlarged trim around the roof itself to provide a little bit more of an architectural feature, but also actually a safety feature for when crew and what have you are on the roof itself. And then to your question about the use of the brick building, while I deal with all of my organization's real estate holdings and work and what have you, unless someone in our organization wants to arm wrestle me, my main focus is to have that property be residential in nature, and have it be a sort of a mixed use property. I think that the business on the ground floor or the basement floor provides a great service, and we wouldn't want to disrupt that. The two upper floors are the ones that are woefully underutilized, and we see it as an opportunity for us to redevelop and go further in terms of meeting the housing needs for the community. But in terms of timing, I don't know yet. Our plans would certainly be to likely, I would hope, finish that work probably somewhat concurrently with this building. The new building will take unfortunately something like 16 to 18 months to construct, probably by the time we're running through still some of the backlog of delays, materials and or other issues. And so it's possible that we'll start construction in the spring. Our plan is to start construction in the spring in the new building if all goes to plan. And then that ensuing 16 to 18 months will be more than enough time for us to get into the brick building and have that renovated, assuming we get site plan approval for that as well.
Thank you. So the new building is basically gonna look the way this one does, and it'll be vinyl siding, only you said it's gonna have a flat metal roof, is that?
It will have a flat roof, likely a membrane type roof, but you wouldn't see it. And so, yes, it would be not vinyl siding unless costs continue to be outrageous. But the siding you see here is, help me right now. It's Hardy, yeah, Hardy. Yeah, so it lasts.
Hardy siding.
Hardy cement.
I couldn't understand what kind of siding?
It's Hardy backer sort of cement type siding, so it's more durable and not sort of puncture.
It's
Okay.
exactly like the Todd Valley Healthcare facility.
Okay, so the view that we're looking at is with including the request for an extended height of the building?
So if you were to essentially lock off the roof structure here, this white line is below that 40-foot, the new 40-foot height restriction that was passed last night.
Okay,
And so our building, as well as the trim work or cornice or what have you, that will go around the perimeter, would be below the new 40-foot height restriction. The building, as you see it currently, as well as this pitch here, would be in violation of the current height restriction.
so does that mean it's not gonna be there, the peak?
That's correct, as well as the dormer that we built in here is really a facade item to break up the roof line structure. So
Right.
we'll take our architect will have fun sort of being creative and costing me money to figure out how best to make this roof line look attractive. But we'll take a different approach without doing this peak here, as well as the two dormers that you see.
Yeah,
Can I step in, please? We have individuals present in the courtroom. I'd like to give opportunity for more of the public to get involved. I don't want to cut anybody off, but I want to stay more focused on what this project is going to entail for construction and less so with the amenities that might prevail once this facility, if this facility is constructed. Can I ask one question? You mentioned something about the right of way that bisects this property. Is there any restrictions on that section, or is that essentially non-existent? There is no right of way on this property.
I believe, I'm sorry, my understanding is that that is a street has been turned over to both parcels, and in this case, one parcel. But there are restrictions on the sewer line that exits that building, so when it's split, there'll have to be an easement that basically runs up the middle of the parking. There is an existing catch basin or manhole about here that catches the sewer from here, and then it runs north to Spring Street.
Is that sewer or storm drain?
We're told it's sewer, but when we opened it, it was powder dry, so we didn't trust it, so therefore we designed a new one to make sure we don't. Make sure we do the right thing. So we met with Public Works out there. They told us what to aim for. And that's what we're aiming for, so. Quite frankly, so that'd be a very easy for us.
All right, thank you. Mike, did you wanna?
Yeah, I've been in construction, industrial construction my whole life. I was a superintendent at Chimbrow for, 43 years.
Oh, 10 years. Yeah,
Thank you. And I helped build the Central Street Bridge. And during that year that we did that bridge, we had the north abutment that ended up settling like 14 inches on one side, 8 inches on the other. Okay. So we ended up demoing it all out, putting all new concrete in. Before we did, we had to dry pile the refusal. Okay. So this whole area was core tested by the Army Corps of Engineers and DOT. And I've been researching this and trying to get the answers for us and for you guys, mostly for you, Randy, because it's going to be a huge, it could become a huge issue for you. That ground where we were was like 12 feet of coal ash and miscellaneous mill waste, and other stuff that they just dumped in there. I can tell you that when we put the H pile in there for that bridge abutment, we had to go 60 and 80 feet to refusal. So
To bedrock.
Yes, to bedrock. So at the time we did this, I think it was in 90. Geez, it was in the mid to late 90s, and trying to get my hands on that report right now is almost impossible. We started with Augusta, then ended up going to, I think it was Presque Isle or, Presque Isle. And they have all the topographical and geographical maps of that. So I'm hoping that we will have those in hand by later this week.
For this site.
For this, well, yeah, between Central Street, a bridge abutment, the north abutment to Penobscot Avenue, points east and west, which would include this property. I don't know the extent of what they core drilled, if they went every 20 feet or what the normal is, or every 100 feet or whatever. But if we can't get a hold of that, that may be something you want to look into, Jason, because
It's very typical that Jason has us do a geotechnical report, have somebody like SW come in and do some borings at the critical points, especially under the foundation.
yes,
So we can properly design those there and at the elevator, the heavy stuff. And we're dealing with that on a couple of Jason's other projects, so
okay,
thanks for the heads up, but that'll probably be standard procedure for our
it
design.
was boilerplate for you guys now.
Well, not us, we'll get SW Cole to tell us what to do and then.
Well, yeah,
They'll tell us,
I mean,
they'll give us the bearing capacity and they'll tell us if there's organics or fluid materials there that we'll have to maybe over excavate and replace, or we come up with a different, wider, bigger footing design to be able to support. I don't want to say the word flow because it really won't flow, but to support that load capacity.
that was our big,
Yeah.
my biggest concern anyway, knowing what the area was used for, or what was put in there, so. And that might just been at the apartment site, but I know that on Water Street and State Street that we had to fix foundations there when we did this project, because it really opened some of them up quite a bit. So just general information for you, because I don't want you
If
to
you've got
start
a report,
something.
please send it along.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
so Randy has heard me say a number of times, I don't like surprises. So yeah, we do have a company go out and do the test borings because we have adequate contingencies, but not to drive 80-foot pilings, right? So we want to know going well into it, but we haven't initiated that study yet, only because for us, we want to have site plan approval to know exactly where we're going versus kind of sending out a crew to dig holes everywhere and not sure exactly where the foundation.
well, budgetary constraints was our concern too, for this to happen,
Right,
so that's why I mentioned it to begin with.
yeah, no, I can appreciate that, and yeah, we definitely don't want the building sagging or moving around.
You don't wanna, you know, if you can help it, I mean, it's quite an expense to come in and dry pile.
Yeah, absolutely.
The one benefit that will help us, although we do need the geotech report to tell us exactly what is this building has a full basement. So we have another 10 to 12 feet to excavate, another couple more feet for the footings for that with the slab. So we're gonna be in the ground about 14 feet to start. And then obviously it'll be a structural build back in its place.
You'll be able to see good what you're getting into then
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah,
So,
but we do want to tell Jason what the damage is up front, so he can prepare.
I'm gonna assume it's good fill, so if anyone wants to put their free fill, I think they put the free fill wanted signs out there, that'll save us on trucking. Getting all of it out.
Can I,
Can I ask if there's no more questions? I don't want to cut you off, but if there's no more questions from the planning board members, I'd like to get the public that are present involved, in addition to the ones on Zoom. We've already had one individual speak and others are here. If that's workable, this is a public hearing, and people that wish to speak, come up to the microphone, state your name and your address, please, and we'll try not to go too far as time, but let's see what works out.
Scott Levitt, 330 Common Street, residents of Mount Market. I know where you're coming from, but my question is this going to be an answer to question Mr. Bird, then give you the what we're thinking of? Because I'd like to ask him a couple of questions. Is that allowed?
I would say so, as long as it's oriented towards getting the project discussed,
Right,
and not getting into
right, and
other issues.
after this, after everybody's spoken about, ask Mr. Bird that there's gonna be another platform for me to come up and express my.
Why don't you take the opportunity now to use your time accordingly, and we'll see how much, because things have moved
Yeah,
along.
I know, but I just didn't get mixed up, because I'd like to ask Mr. Bird questions.
Yeah,
And if they're not answered, if I'm just presenting this, then I'm not gonna be able to answer it.
yeah.
For him to answer me what I want.
Okay, I don't want to constrain you
You know.
since this is a public hearing. And just to let you know, sir, the document you distributed on November 1st
Yep,
were made a part of the minutes that were reviewed,
yep,
and each of us have that document.
Yes.
Okay,
yep. And I was like Mike was concerned about when you started digging. That, let's say you dig down 10 feet and you hit coal ash. What is your plan after that? Are you gonna keep digging, or because that coal ash, you don't know how much footage is gonna be there? So, and I know with it gonna go along with what I was gonna ask about, I know I've read that it's gonna be a $7 to $8 million project. You know, so what if you get into this and you're gonna have trouble? Are you planning on making some cutbacks to the building or something to bring that down to get you to the quota? Because I know you're not gonna wanna go from 8 million to 15 million, you know, so I just asking that, just clear. And I appreciate all your emails and everything that you've done for me to answer all my questions.
Sure. No, they've been great questions. Same for the ones tonight. So the question around the test borings, I can have Randy speak to the exact methodology that they do, but I think the machinery can go down 30, 40 feet probably easily.
We can drill as far as you need.
Yeah.
We can boring as deep as we need to bedrock if need be. So the game plan would be to take boring samples until we get to good material. So if we keep hitting coal ash or, you know, buried cars or something, we're gonna keep that, drilling holes until we find out how deep that is. So we will have the answer on what we're going to do once we discover what the problem really is, if there is one.
Okay.
So it won't be a surprise when we're digging, oh crap, we don't know, we didn't expect this. We'll already know what we're looking for.
Yeah.
And Jason will have already made a decision on whether to.
So there more or less won't be any cutbacks to the building if you can help it. You know, replacing this or replacing that, you know, with your budget. That's what I'm concerned about, because you really don't know what you're getting into with the high price of things today.
Yeah.
You know, because I know the University of Maine stopped one building because they didn't have the money for the materials to keep going. So if you halfway through and something happens, and are you gonna leave just a half a building, or are you gonna add more money, a couple of more millions to it?
Sure, no, it's a good question. Yeah, so the way that our process works, once we have this approval, we go through a number of stages of estimating. Much to my chagrin, but we kind of work with a contractor who goes out to subs locally and gets pricing. And then as we sort of go down the line, we ratchet up and we get what we call the guaranteed maximum price.
Yeah.
And so before construction even starts, we have a contractually bound cost estimate. We have a contingency on the side should we have an error in drafting or something minor, or we do hit a pocket of ledge or something that our test borings didn't identify. But I can assure you that our funders, not only with Maine Housing, but our private investors, the banks that receive tax credits for investing in this, have really a watertight scenario, and they make sure that we've gone through our paces. So we've designed the building, and we've done this a couple times, that helps. And we've sort of gone through every sort of iteration and done all the pre-planning. So we don't run into we've, hit, the frame of the building, and then, something has happened, right? That it becomes unaffordable. We will often work with our contractor partners if like we did during the pandemic, the price shot up 25% overnight on some key materials. We helped some of that because that wasn't necessarily their responsibility, but at the same time, like I said, we have a guaranteed maximum price, a contractually bound price. So once we start the work, once we, dig into the ground, and begin construction, it will be completed. Otherwise, there'll be, a lot of pain and suffering on our organization's behalf. And, my job is to not get in trouble with that. So we make sure it gets completed.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Also, you said the last minute is Miss Wheaton. Did you get a copy of that, what I sent?
Yes.
Thing, okay. So I'm gonna try to keep this short completely, just read it and that's it. I'm here to express my opposition to the proposed development of the property of 70 Spring Street. My opposition is based on these credentials. FX, the loss of the neighborhood and community character, the decrease in my market value of my house, increased traffic congestion, the destruction of space where kids and teens play, increase in taxes in the neighborhood, noise, disturbance, overlooking a loss of privacy, nuisance, and shading and loss of light. Can't create creativity and the concept of less is more, and the vibe of small town life prevail. I can see our small, beautiful towns staying small or beautiful with tall buildings. At the end, it's a quality of life. That's the issue around here. And I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Scott,
Yes.
while you're right there, you saw that You saw the photos of the building.
Yes, and if you would have got a copy of what I gave last meeting, you look in the picture and there's showing the picture with not my house, but how it's gonna look. I'm sorry to disturb the questions. No,
I'm just thinking that, you stating what you just stated, I think it's a beautiful building.
yeah,
I think that, it's gonna add value to this town, just for the sole purpose of what it's being built for. I don't know if there's any other place for it. I don't know. I mean, if you look around here, we really don't have any real estate. But I understand your concerns. But I don't know if it's gonna decrease your property value. Have you spoke to Lauren?
no, it's gonna decrease the market value. Because if I want to sell my house at 100,000, somebody comes in and looks and says, wow, this big building behind that, we want our privacy. That's what I'm talking about here, not, I know that, I've talked to different ones and the increase in taxes are probably going to be increased because that building's going to be worth $7-8 million around an area that it's going to be squared in.
Yeah, but they'll take care of the taxes. That's what they. They'll pay.
Oh, Penquist's going to pay for my taxes?
No, they'll pay for the taxes to the property.
I know, but my property is gonna be abutted to that
Yeah.
with the increase that too, so I've gotta be concerned about that. I know,
The value of a different building.
even if somebody wants to buy it and say, we can't buy it because that big building's there, oh, okay, I'm just,
Taxes on your property.
because that building's there, my tax will not increase. So we get you saying that, so if my increase, if my taxes go up $1,000, we're gonna come back to you and say, you will pay for it. And another thing, Mike, is I don't have anything against this building, it's just where it's gonna be placed. And it's gonna be a hazard, just looking at it and that's the only thing, I think Penquist does a great job. But this is probably the only building that they're building that's entwined with that, because I've looked at their other buildings. And I think they do a great job, but it's just not, I just don't wanna look at a big 40-foot building right behind my house.
Thank you.
But like I said, I've talked to Mr. Bird and he's been great answering my questions. And we, as far as I know, we're not enemies yet. Thank you.
And I say, looking at this picture of a similar neighborhood, I was wondering if your other neighbors were here to speak against, for or against this. Can we hear from you? Thank you.
Abe Laban, 341 Congress. I live at the corner of Spring and Congress. I'm on the other side of the street. And so the building wouldn't affect me directly like it would the Levitts. Scott has already explained the reasons why he objects to that large building, and I support that. I try to put myself there, and how would I feel? I would feel exactly the same way that Scott feels, and I'm not going to go through the negative effects of it because you've already heard it. I think that's a very real thing. I think we have to put ourselves, each one of you and me, we live there. How would we feel? How would we feel? And that's the bottom line. Do you expect someone else to bear a burden that you wouldn't accept yourself? That's a very real consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any response from the individuals on the application that wish to deal with the question or issue that was raised? If not, I'm going to ask for more input from the public, but go ahead.
I appreciate the offer. I'm all set at this time. Thank you.
Other individuals from the public that wish to speak tonight concerning this matter?
Diana Furukawa, 346 Penobscot Avenue. Although until a few months ago, I actually lived right across the street from 70 Spring Street on the corner of Spring and Penobscot, so I'm very familiar with this area. I'm speaking in favor of the proposal tonight. I think housing is a huge need in this community, as I think we're all aware, especially for aging people. There are so many people living in Millinocket alone in houses that are falling apart. And we need to make these kind of investments in housing infrastructure that will keep people safe as they age here. I think this is more than a housing structure too. As Mr. Bird outlined, there's going to be community spaces, little nooks where people can read in the hallways and socialize and be less isolated as they age. There's going to be gardens. So I see this as developing yet another social infrastructure that our town greatly needs. I also think the location is, I understand that it's a tight lot, but it's really positive to me that it's downtown, actually. It's walkable, it's visible. As people drive through town, they're gonna see that there's development happening here, and that our elders are a part of our community. We're not hiding them away somewhere. But no matter where we put this, someone's gonna say, not in my backyard. It's just how it goes. So I think putting it where they've proposed would actually help us realize one of the big ideas from the Katahdin Gazetteer, which is to make Millinocket a walkable village. It would bring that activity right downtown. It would help us revitalize our downtown and integrate these critical members of our community more into our social fabric. Lastly, I just want to say, from my work at the library, we do a lot of connecting people to resources of all kinds. And we work with Penquist all the time. They are a trusted partner in terms of heating fuel, rent assistance, tax assistance. And I feel that they really understand the needs of the aging population in Maine. They're going to take a holistic approach to this. And it's not, they have investment in this community and in the needs of elders. I think people are asking good questions tonight. I'm not saying that we should not think critically about this, but yeah, wherever we put this, someone is going to object. And I think that the benefits of this project greatly outweigh the concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me stay with the public if I can. Anybody that wishes to discuss this matter or not get into personalities, but wish to address specific issues that were brought up in the last 20 minutes, please do, but I just don't want to get into proverbial contest here. Yes, is someone on the Zoom platform that no? Oh, okay. Let me mention, when we met on the 1st, I asked planning board members to visit the site. I did take the opportunity myself, I assume others did too. When I looked at the other apartment facilities in this town, mostly on Warsaw Street, they're all 2-story. This is 3-story. It obviously is going to impinge, that's not the right word, but it will be in proximity to properties on the east side of this lot. And there is no way of, I would just say, minimizing that. It will be a difference than what it is today. It doesn't make it good or bad, it just is what it is. And obviously that's something that's gonna have to be accepted or essentially rejected. But as far as the need for housing in the town, I'm not too astute on the actual needs, except I heard that things are very difficult. And I think that's more the case than not the case as far as housing in this community. This proposal has some potential, but obviously it has some aspects that individuals in proximity to the lot might have a wish list that was not the case as it was, as it is right now at this location. But like I said, it's just something that some people will be more impacted than others. It's not being dismissed, but it's something that is unavoidable. I wouldn't say it's cast in concrete, but it's, when there's change, there's change. I'll stop rambling on and open it up to more to the public and or planning board members. Or the applicants, excuse me.
Nothing further to add at this time. I'm happy to answer questions.
All right, thank you. Can I mention one other thing? In Mr. Bragg's presentation, I had a question to you, Mr. Byrd, about was this structure going to be on a slab or a basement? Mr. Bragg indicated this was going to have a full basement underneath it. The thing that I also asked for a question is the total height of the building, and you indicated that that's not known at this time. It's going to be in proximity to mid-high 30s at least, or mid-30s at least.
Yeah.
Okay.
The actual floor to floor distance is 11 feet, so that puts us at 33 at the top of the third floor. And then we need some kind of roof structure 2 or 3 more feet, plus this mansard to make it look more residential than a commercial building, which gets us closer to the 40-foot mark. We just cannot make it work under the 30-foot mark. We're working with the architect now to figure out what that final number will be, but it will certainly be below 40.
And I'll add to it, even though I said I had nothing else to add, that I think if approved, and sort of recognizing the abutters concerns, if for no other reason, you know, it'd be just it would cost more if it's taller. So I think, you know, we will be cognizant of that and intentionally keep the height as low as possible, as reasonably possible. But again, as I said, if for no other reason, you know, the higher we go, the more expensive it is. So we're going to be cost conscious in that respect.
When you say that, the project is proposed at a 3-story construction, and there is no intent here to go less, or is there?
No, we wouldn't go less than 3 stories, but there's opportunity in terms of the floor to floor height difference. So if we were to add, you know, essentially taller walls for chases, for utilities, those kinds of things, we try to keep them very compact and tight, because it's less building to heat and cool, and just, you know, less to maintain the smaller the footprint. So we'll be conscientious of that as we're finalizing the design. So if we have alternatives for chaseways and those kinds of things, we'll utilize that in order to keep the height down as well in our final design consideration.
Your building code dictating.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Correct.
Is it what?
Building code.
The building code will dictate what they're allowed to do.
Right. Thank you. Thank you.
So once the design is completed, there will be a building permit process that where the code officer, acting code officer will get another chance to review items. And as Jason mentioned, there's plenty of things that are subjective, like the color of the siding or what kind of trees we plant, those kind of things, which are very flexible at this point. So, but the building code will dictate things like required elevator, ADA, fully sprinkled building, all of those kind of things are requirements. Certain amount of insulation, all of that stuff.
Your 911 system.
Knox spots.
Yeah.
My last question on my list of things, and I've addressed this to Mr. Byrd before, maybe to you too, Mr. Bragg, is the financial sources for this project. It was mentioned in the application that tax credits, long-term debt, and grants were the revenue sources, but something that is more specific, that X amount of money is gonna be coming from, not coming as much as, monies from a financial institution or institutions that say when this project gets started, we're gonna be carrying it through to completion. There won't be any half-baked white elephant out there to understand it. All right.
Yes, yeah, we will certainly be able to provide you, that documentation to the town. We're working on it now, getting a letter from our investor, and from Maine Housing that should satisfy that.
All right, well, thank you. It's something that should have been addressed prior to even coming before the board, but it's one of the items as the board reviews this in a section of the ordinance 125-111. It'll be an item on our list of, did we receive this? Is there financial backing for this project?
So you're saying prior to issuing a building permit?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Essentially, that this project is gonna go through this review by this board, this site plan review that I'm describing here. This will occur, and if things are deficient, things are gonna get a look.
If I may clarify those, so you're saying, that is, having that documentation is a condition of the site plan approval or the issuing of the building permit?
Issue of the site plan approval.
It is.
It's one of the things that's on our list of things we're obligated to ensure for the community, so that it's nothing to do with Pancras per se, but any individual or any corporation that comes before the board for a project needs to substantiate that they have the financial backing to carry through to completion, so that the community isn't left with something that's less of an asset. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Yes, John.
I guess I'm asking from a point of view of a taxpayer, non-archit. I see this application's name is Pancras Development Corporation Incorporated. I see that as a nonprofit incorporation. And I'm just concerned that this building isn't going to end up being a tax-free institution. I'm hoping that that's not so, but is there any compound answer to that question?
Sure, I mean, anything I say is complex and hard to understand, but I'll do my best, because what I'm gonna reference is a lot of detail and minutia that isn't applicable, but I will say at the end of the day, the owner entity, the owner of record for this property will be a for-profit entity. So that will be fully taxable. And the reasons are such that our investors essentially want that, need that for depreciation, and a whole host of other things. So it's a benefit to the town that the property is taxable. Yes, at the end of the day. Now, we have the nonprofit have a controlling interest in it, and then that would be for a period of at least 15 years, while our investors are required to be a part owner in the property. What happens after that, we often enter into some sort of credit enhancement agreement or a pilot agreement with the community. Because we need and value for us to contribute to be able to provide services to the tenants that we have in the building. So we don't expect to go without essentially contributing to the tax base. And
Thank you.
I have a question.
This project will be a for-profit project as far as going forward. This town will not be dealing with nonprofit real estate, if you will.
correct. So the owner entity will be a for-profit entity. at least for 15 years. What ends up happening at that point, the investors say, we're out of here. We've received all of our tax credit benefits. We don't want to participate anymore. Penquist as an entity, and we've done this now 4 or 5 times, we take that ownership entity and convert it to a nonprofit. At that time, we also broached the subject with the municipality to talk about property taxes going forward. We don't want to leave the community in a lurch, and we fully recognize that there are costs associated with providing services to our tenants. And so and who knows what's going to happen with municipal tax law in 15 years, but assuming nothing changes, we wouldn't want to be in a position of not contributing to the tax base because we know that there are costs associated with having that building in town.
All right, thank you.
I have a question.
No, I'm
Tony?
not certain if I understand the full ramifications. I know what you said. I don't know all that it means. That's my issue here. But in 15 years, things might change is the way I'm understanding this.
The owner entity may change. I can't commit to my board of directors, may have a different approach. The town may have a different approach. Municipal tax law may be different in 15 years. With that said, we do have property tax agreements with municipalities when we build these properties. It's an opportunity for the municipality to lock in essentially a continued and decades-long property tax agreement. So that way, it protects them from us, not that we would, but we could, at 15 years, convert it to a nonprofit and pay $0, right? Assuming that's the legal appropriate thing for us to do if we wanted to. That's not necessary here. And again, as an organization, we have a better reputation than that. So I can say that our intent today certainly is to do that, but I couldn't necessarily obligate our organization in any way unless there was a different contractual relationship like a pilot or a credit enhancement agreement with the municipality.
All right, thank you. I'm sorry, Tom, go ahead.
I don't know why we're going down this road, because that has nothing to do with the site plan. We need to stick to what we're doing a site plan review for this facility. We have had other entities come into this community that are nonprofits. I think for Penquist to step forward with this project in a community that is in dire need of housing for elderly. I see it day after day. I see people that are struggling to stay in their homes, elderly people. The idea of this project is to help the community. I think we need to stick to the site review plan and do what's required under the site review. This other stuff, that can be handled by the town. That's the town's responsibility to take care. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, and I agree with you in that regard. And I mentioned there were people on the Zoom platform. If you would just, okay, is that Barbara?
Yeah, that's Barbara. I have a question, if I may. I really appreciate Miss.
Please, Barbara.
What?
State your name and address.
Oh, I'm
please.
sorry. Barbara Riddle Dvorak. I live at 6 Main Avenue opposite the library. And I work for Age Friendly Millinocket. And I'm 79 and I'm aging in my home so far. And I do very much appreciate the intention, and we certainly need housing for older people. I have 20 years of experience in real estate in San Francisco and New York, and I would like to just back up again a little bit to the initial discussion of the need to ascertain the nature of the ground under the building. And I didn't quite understand. Well, first of all, I'm surprised that you came up with a budget without determining the nature of the ground. But let's just say going forward, you are going to be determining that. What is your, do you have an estimated cap for when it's no longer viable in terms of your budget? Right now, let's say it's 6 million. What if it comes to 3 million more because of the nature of the foundation. Where are you going to get the money for, how have you built that into your planning? And is there a limit when you're doing the boring and you say, you know what, it's just going to turn out to be too expensive? And why wasn't that done earlier? How could you come up with a budget without knowing what the ground situation was?
So we, as I mentioned earlier in previous presentations, we built the building, this exact building, a number of times. And so we have really good data on the sort of ground up costs. And your point is well taken, that we really don't know what is in the ground. And so we have taken an educated guess. We are, I wouldn't say crossing our fingers by any stretch of the imagination, but the way that our development process works is that it would be premature for us to send out a test or a crew, a boring crew, to go and dig and take soil samples where the foundation would be if we don't know where the foundation is going to go. So if for some reason this application were denied, then that could be, you know, $10,000 to $15,000, you know, sort of down the drain that wouldn't be suitable or wouldn't be possible for us to regain. But with approval, we would then have Randy and his team communicate with the testing company to go out and identify the exact locations that are important for us to test.
Right. But do you have in mind a limit over which your budget increase cannot go and still make the project viable?
So we have a contingency of about 10% that we open up with. We try not to tell our contractor that too much, just so that they don't take advantage of that. But you know, you mentioned 3 million or something like that. I would say if Randy comes back and says, "Ooh, bad news, the soils are such that there's clay or some other thing that's going to cost $500,000 or more," then it's probably at that point a no-go for us. But we arrive at that number well before we break ground, and so it's not like we'll start digging and find something and be unaware. We will do that due diligence, but it's just at this stage, without site plan approval, it's premature for us to incur that cost and take that time and disrupt the soil without knowing exactly where the foundation is going to be.
Okay.
Can I just mention, as far as the cost of this possible issue with the suitability of the site, that would be something, if the project gets approved, that's going to fall upon the applicant to deal with, and it would be something that might cut the project off at the knees, but it wouldn't have the impact upon the community per se, except for the loss of the project, but for no reason of our own. It's just circumstances that were unavoidable.
I understand.
Okay, thank you, Barbara. Any more comments from members of the public?
Maybe if I just added that along the process, typical process is as we progress the design at 50%, at 90%, at 100%, there's all these price checks. And as we get further to the final design, we know more, we're getting narrower. So we feel much more comfortable about the contingency that we're carrying. So well before we start digging into the ground for this foundation, we will know the impact of, and sooner than later, I assume if we get approval, we'll be making the call tomorrow to do those kinds of things, because those are big impact things that we need to know or no go right away. So there's many checks. We just went through another one just today with another one of Jason's projects at 50%. Taking care of things to make sure there was enough budget to do the project. And there will be another step when we get to 90%, another step before we even go out to bid.
Would it be a consideration if the foundation turns out to be a lot more expensive and deeper to make it a 2-story building with a really good foundation in order to meet your budget, or would that not be viable?
So it's not viable from a inefficiency of scale. So when we rent these units, they're rented below market. So we have to have a critical mass necessary to pay all the bills. And so that 35, 36 unit, number is the threshold. If we drop below that, it just becomes untenable for us as an organization, because we know, over the decades that we're going to own the property, that it wouldn't be financially viable for us. Because at the end of the day, we get subsidy to build the building. But after that, our investors in housing basically say, all right, good luck, have fun. So if we lose money, we lose money. I can show you our portfolio numbers. We lose money sometimes, and it hurts, but on balance, the portfolio performs, and we're able to provide the critical support.
All right, thank you. Any other comments from the public? Individuals on Zoom, and planning board members? The reason I'm asking is, it's 7 o'clock. We've been at this for 90 minutes. I don't want to embark on this section 125, 111 that I talked about. It'll keep us here for a while longer. And I already indicated there's a deficiency, at least one, on this financial matter that I'd like to see rectified. But I think everything else that I had on my list of things, my wish list has been addressed. No, go ahead.
If I may, on that one issue, by no means is it my position to tell the community what to do, but that check in balance, or to ensure that we have the financial wherewithal to complete the project, is entirely appropriate. We traditionally see that being a condition of building permit versus site plan approval, and so it's a bit of a chicken and the egg, because we take our concept to our investors. The investors say, well, show me that it's, that you've got a permit, that you can build that building, and then you price that building where it sits and where it's approved. If that is a condition of even site plan approval, which we view as an earlier step, if that's required, then we're going to do the best we can to get some documentation to show that. The reason why I don't have it for you tonight, though, is it's in our world, it's sort of a later step that we would do before we can come here to town office, or a contractor can come here to the town office and get permission to put shovels in the ground. So it's, like I said, entirely worthwhile of an exercise and a requirement. It's outside of our traditional order, so it's harder for me to get that documentation at this stage.
All right, I appreciate the comment, but essentially this is something that's been in our document since it was adopted in '92. I would say that this is a typical project. This is a pretty good sized project, as projects go in this community. But it's something that we would be remiss if the point of concern or discussion by the board, and we didn't get some guidance that indicates we're given approval for something that is financed appropriately. All right. Let me ask if there's no other comments. I'm not trying to cut
Tony,
people
I
off.
have just one.
Yes, I do.
Thank you for your patience and your expertise in this. I can tell that this is not your first rodeo.
Well,
So.
I want to thank the community, because I can tell you I've had less than a warm reception, even with neighbors, and Randy can attest. So this has been a pleasant experience.
Can I mention that we are not addressing what needs to be finalized here with that section 125, 111, and I want to address it, but not tonight. It'll just be a
Thank you.
okay. But essentially, I want to set a date when we can get together. I'm looking at next week, the week thereafter, or the week thereafter that. It comes with December 13th, December 20th, or December 27th. I just need to make sure.
Say those dates again, please.
December 13th, it's a Tuesday, each of them are Tuesdays. December 20th or December 27th.
Okay. I take my kids to see their mom's grave at Arlington this week for her birthday, for my late daughter's birthday. So I won't be here the 13th, but I really do want to be at the next hearing. So either the other 3 days.
Yeah. Let me take this from the positive side. How many can be here on the 13th? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, how many can be here on the 20th? 1, 2, I can be here on the 20th, 3, 4, 5. And the 27th? No, okay, let's try for the 13th. Am I getting, okay. Let's try for the 13th, which is next week. As far as the time,
Yeah. The 13th, I can make it the 6th, I can't.
oh, I'm sorry, I apologize. I'll flip the pages here, and, the first is the 6th. Thank you,
I will be here the 13th, by the way.
You will be
That
here.
covers everything, yeah.
What about the 6th, which is next week? And I do apologize for my ineptness here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's go with the 6, folks, if that's workable, no, go ahead, please.
I guess I need a clarification. This is the second public hearing.
All our meetings are open to the public. This was a public hearing.
Right.
By definition.
Right,
And
the
it
next
was-
one is not.
Well, it's not a public hearing by definition, but the public is always invited.
Right, but it's not a public hearing.
Oh, yes, yeah. This was in the newspaper twice in a row, things like that.
Yes, yeah, I understand that, Tony. This one was, but the next one is not. It's open to the public, like all of our meetings are. And the
Yeah.
public's welcome to speak. But that is to address the one issue that we still have.
The issue that's pending is section 125, 111.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other discussion, questions?
Is Peter gonna be able to be here? I didn't see his hand.
Okay, I'm talking about the 6th, and I do apologize for my foul up there. It's the 6th, the 13th, and the 20th.
Yeah, I can get you around in the 6th.
I got your back, Peter.
Okay, yes, John. I was just gonna ask that. We're meeting at this hour, 5:30, and we can continue with that unless I hear otherwise. We typically have met at 6:30, but
Unless we can make it earlier.
You put that in an email, right?
yes, I did. Oh, you said, did I, or would I? Yes, I will.
Because I can come in on Zoom that night.
Yeah. Yes, you can.
I always forget it, and
Uh,
I want an apartment.
we can stay with 5:30, or we can try something even earlier, but I'm just trying to make sure we're all on the same page. 5:30 is when we met tonight.
5:30.
If not, there was just mentioned about 4:30. Is that an issue?
4:30? No, that'd be great.
Is it workable?
Can you do it, Adam?
Yeah, you do it quickly when you want.
That's right. That's the motivation.
All right, yeah, I'm not discussing this with you, and it's appropriate, yeah, but essentially, if we can meet at 4:30 on the 6th and convene in this room, assuming that this will be, no, go ahead. You were gonna say something, Mr. Burke?
Just that you were gonna ask me if I was available.
Yes.
I can certainly be available, at least by Zoom. I will see what I can do to be here in person. But certainly by Zoom.
All right, thank you. Do you have a comment, Mr. Burke? No. Let's make this, for December 6th, next week, 4:30. I say in this room, but I'll get guidance from the town manager if something is otherwise. But 4:30 on the 6th. No other discussion?
That allow you, Mr. Bird, enough time to get what you need?
Yes.
And will the only topic will be this 125-111?
That's the focus, is 125, 111 in our zoning ordinance. To get this through the steps of it's meeting our requirements or it's not meeting our requirements.
So. You have time to advertise that?
No, it doesn't have to be advertised, it has to go to the town clerk, so obviously we're getting a little bit tight there, but I'll take care of that tonight.
We don't have to advertise?
No,
No, it's.
It's a regular meeting.
yeah,
Public hearings.
yeah. Yeah, we're not obligated for that, but essentially, we're not trying to get something under the rug, if you will. I'm trying to expedite things since we've been moving on this since, I think, mid-late August. It's just, time to see if we can get to an endpoint. Okay, December 6th, 4:30 in this room, unless I hear otherwise, and I'll send out an email to that effect. Please mark your calendar. If there's no other discussion.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Tom. Is there a second? Is there a second?
I did.
Avern,
Thank you all. Thank you.
thank you very much, and thank you for everyone's patience.